looked like Elvis, that his nose was flat, and that it, of course, Elvis didn't look like he did when he was alive. Elvis died. He was on his knees, and his elbows and his face was in the rug. Elvis had a massive heart attack. He lay there for about 2.5 or 3 hours before he was found in that position. And by that time, the body deteriorates, and certainly by the time they found Elvis, rigor mortis had already set in. So his face was already shaped as to where a funeral home could not do anything about the looks. And then Elvis had an autopsy, which will change the looks of a body. He had the type of autopsy, post-autopsy, that everything is removed from the body. So this deteriorates the looks of a body. Had it been me, I would have never opened the casket. But Vernon came from the old school, the same as I did. When my mother passed away, they asked me, did I want, said, Mr. Sumner, it's customary now that we don't open the casket at the church during the funeral, but it's up to you. I said, the casket will be open. Vernon should have kept the casket closed, but instead of that, Vernon had the casket open for everybody to see. There was 80,000 people that came through to view the body after it was placed at Graceland. Now the thing to do, in the old days, you brought the body home, and people set up with it. The same thing happened to Elvis, because Vernon was from the old school. Now people don't do that. Elvis was brought home to Graceland. He was put in the foyer of Graceland, and people were allowed by the thousands to come by and view Elvis Presley. And it could have been easily that the casket could have been closed. It could have been a closed funeral. Even I would not have been able to have attended the funeral if it had been a hoax or anything pertaining to a hoax. But Elvis Presley was dead. His casket was open. Thousands of people saw him. All the people at the funeral that day saw him. I felt of his hand. I know that Elvis Presley is dead.
Well, I guess sadly all of us in this room and everybody who is listening to this tape surely know by now that with you being there and you being in charge of the funeral, it's true that the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, is dead. But as we close this series of tapes, tell us something funny.
Well, of course, when you was around Elvis, well, everything was funny. Because if he wanted to be funny, you laughed whether it was funny or not. But I was in Tucson, Arizona, singing at a little Baptist church. Got a telephone call from Elvis. He traced me down through calling my wife at home and finding out where I was at. He traced me down and wanted me and the Stamped Quartet to come to Denver to sing at a funeral. And, of course, we had dates every night, so he said, my Jetstar is on the way to pick you up. There wasn't any question of whether I was going or not. The plane was already on the way. So at that time, I had a boy singing bass by the name of Larry Strickland. So I left Larry with the bus to drive it to the next date over in New Mexico. The Stamped Quartet got on the plane. We went to Denver. We sang at the funeral. After the funeral was over, of course, Elvis came to the funeral dressed as a policeman. He had a police uniform on. He and Linda and came to the funeral, and Elvis was supposedly a policeman. After the funeral was over, Elvis said, I want you to stay with me. But when he wanted you to do something, you did it. I stayed with him. And the quartet was sent back to finish filling the dates that needed to be done on that tour. I waited in my room, as you always did, for to see what Elvis, what he wanted, or if he wanted anything, or whatever. I just waited in the room until I was almost starving to death, so I decided I was going down to the coffee shop and have supper. I went down and had supper, eat as fast as I could, come back up, and as I was approaching my room, I heard a telephone ringing. I run, unlocked the door, and sure enough, it was my phone ringing, and it was Elvis. Elvis said,